Everyone clapped for her. Everyone smiled. Everyone looked at her like she was a genius. And I stood there, in silence, knowing it was mine. I never thought Betrayal would feel so clean, so polished, so perfectly presented under bright white lights. The conference room at Del Mar and Finch, a rising tech startup in downtown San Diego, was filled with warm applause and polite murmurs of admiration. A sleek slideshow flickered on the projector screen above, displaying mock-ups of an AI-powered mental health app one had poured my soul into for 6 straight months. Except no one knew that. No one but her. Her name lit up the screen in large Helvetica font. Presentation by Madison Lee. Madison, my best friend, my roommate, my sister in everything but blood. And now, my thief. I didn't clap. I didn't breathe. My hands were curled into trembling fists under the conference table as she smiled up there, pointing at my wireframes, explaining my development process, using phrases I had coined during our late-night brainstorming sessions. She was a natural on stage, charming, articulate, confident. A confidence built on my effort. No one noticed me. Not my manager, not the CEO sitting in the front row, not even Madison, who had already moved to the next slide with the kind of elegance that only someone fully convinced of her own brilliance could carry. Only I knew the truth, and it was burning me from the inside out. Let me rewind. My name is Olivia Carter. I'm 26, recently graduated from Stanford with a double major in cognitive science and computer engineering. I'm what they call the brainy quiet type, the one who works overtime for free, not because I'm trying to impress anyone, but because I actually care about what I do. When I got the job at Del Mar and Finch, I thought I was finally on track to build something that mattered. I had always been passionate about mental health and how technology could bridge the gap in underserved communities. I even wrote my senior thesis on AI companionship therapy. It wasn't just a job, it was my purpose. Madison and I had met during freshman orientation and clicked instantly. She was bubbly where I was reserved, spontaneous where I was cautious. We balanced each other out, or so I thought. We were roommates all through college and even moved into a 2-bedroom apartment together in San Diego once we both landed jobs in the same company, she in PR and partnerships, me in product design. She had always joked, "Liv, you think too much. Let me handle the people, you handle the tech." Dream team, right? At first, it worked. We shared ideas over takeout, sketched out vision boards on our kitchen table, and stayed up late building the prototype for what would become Hume, a mental wellness app named after the philosopher David Hume because, well, I'm a nerd like that. But somewhere along the way, our partnership blurred. I should have seen it coming. The night before the big presentation, I had shown her my latest build in our apartment, excitement bubbling out of me like soda after a shake. She nodded along, gave feedback, asked thoughtful questions. Then she offered to preview the idea to the leadership team during a breakfast meet and greet. "Just get their buy-in early," she said. "I won't show anything formal. Just float the concept." I didn't think twice. She was my best friend. Why wouldn't I trust her? Now, as I sat watching her take credit for everything, I wondered how I ever believed we were on the same team. The worst part wasn't even the theft, it was how good she was at it. She didn't fumble once. She used the same cadence I had when I practiced the speech in my head. She even mimicked some of my nervous gestures, hand tucked behind the ear, pacing 2 steps to the left when making an important point. Was she studying me? When the presentation ended, a chorus of polite claps filled the room again. Our CEO, Mr. Jordan Mathers, stood up and smiled. "That was impressive, Madison. Really forward-thinking work." I wanted to scream. I wanted to stand and shout. She stole that from me. But the words stayed locked inside my throat. I caught her eye briefly as she stepped down from the podium. Her gaze flicked toward me for half a second, empty, unreadable. Then she smiled. The kind of smile people use when they've just gotten away with murder. That night, the apartment was unusually quiet. She got home before me, of course. Probably went out for post-presentation drinks. I walked in to find her sprawled on the couch, watching a rerun of The Office, wearing a face mask and sipping wine like she hadn't just committed creative robbery. "Hey babe," she said cheerfully. Want Thai or sushi tonight? I stared at her, stunned by her casual tone. You seriously don't think we should talk about what happened today? She blinked. What do you mean? My voice trembled. You presented my project. She took a long sip of wine and shrugged. Liv, we brainstormed that stuff together. No, we didn't, I said, stepping closer. You've never written a single line of code. You didn't design the interface. You didn't do the user surveys. That was all me. Madison rolled her eyes. You're being dramatic. I pitched an idea. That's what I do. You build stuff, I sell it. We're a team. Don't get weird about it. I felt something inside me fracture. I trusted you. And I trust you to not make this into some petty jealousy thing, she snapped. God, Liv, it's not like I stole your boyfriend. She turned her attention back to the TV. That was the moment something in me shut down. Not because she betrayed me, but because she wasn't even sorry. Over the next few days, things shifted. She acted like nothing happened, brought home matcha lattes, shared memes, laughed too loudly, talked about next steps for the app. Meanwhile, I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. My chest felt tight constantly. At work, whispers floated through hallways about Madison's pitch. She got invited into more meetings, asked to sit in on the development committee calls. She even offered to help guide the product direction, as if she had any clue how neural network integration worked. And I just sat there, silenced, paralyzed, until the day I opened my laptop and discovered the shared folder where all my wireframes had been stored was gone. Deleted. Entirely wiped. I stared at the blank screen, hands trembling, heart pounding. It wasn't just betrayal now, it was a cover-up. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't an accident. This was war. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at my desk in the dark, lit only by the blue glow of my laptop screen and the slow, flickering pulse of the router. My eyes were fixed on the empty shared folder where months of my life had existed just a day ago. Gone. Every line of code. Every prototype mockup. Every annotated user test report I had uploaded to our drive, erased. Only one person had access to that folder besides me. Madison. The fury in my chest burned slow and cold. No screaming. No crying. Just a quiet rage, like frost creeping under a locked door. She hadn't just taken credit. She was erasing the evidence of my existence. I opened the file history logs and tried to track the deletion. It was smart. Whoever did it, her, obviously, had used an alternate account and masked the IP address. Probably logged in from a proxy server, or even the guest Wi-Fi from a coffee shop. But there were traces. Little digital fingerprints she didn't even know she left. Timestamps. Metadata. I exported the history and backed up every traceable log to a local encrypted folder on my own drive. If she wanted war, she was going to get it. The next day at work, she brought muffins. Banana nut, still warm from the bakery down the street. She placed the box gently in the center of the break room table, laughing easily with two of our interns. Just a little treat to celebrate yesterday's success, she said sweetly. I watched her from the corridor, barely able to breathe. People saw her as friendly, charming, approachable. She was the golden girl of our office now, the one who saw the future of wellness tech. And I had become invisible. I sat at my desk in silence, trying to force myself to work. My eyes burned from lack of sleep, and my stomach churned every time I heard her laugh echo across the floor. At lunchtime, she strutted over and leaned on the edge of my desk like she hadn't just erased my career. You okay? She asked, faux concern on her face. You look kind of pale. I stared at her, saying nothing. She glanced around to make sure no one was listening, then lowered her voice. Look, Liv, I know you're stressed. But if you keep acting like this, people are going to notice. Just keep it cool, okay? There was a threat hidden in that sentence. She was warning me. Don't make noise. Don't cause a scene. I nodded slowly. But in my mind, I was already building the battlefield. I started documenting everything. Every email. Every Slack message. Every meeting where she reshared my ideas. Every time she took my work and gave it a new name. I recorded voice memos to myself, when I left the office. Screenshotted conversations. Backed up old drive links from browser history. She thought she had erased everything. She didn't know I had more copies than she realized. It wasn't just about getting my credit back anymore. It was about showing everyone who she really was. But I had to be smart. One wrong move, and she'd paint me as jealous, bitter, paranoid. I couldn't confront her head-on. I had to let her dig her own grave. 2 weeks later, during a development committee call, Madison introduced an idea she'd been mulling over for weeks, a gamified wellness tracker that rewarded users with points for consistent journal entries. It was my idea. She even used the same mock-up title I had written, Mind Points, Cognitive Engagement Tracker. But this time, I was prepared. I pulled up the archived screenshot of the sketchbook page where I'd drawn the concept 2 months earlier. I had even dated it. I uploaded the image anonymously to a public GitHub repo with a timestamp and source file attribution under my full name. Then I waited. That weekend, we were both invited to a company retreat up in Big Bear, 3 days of team bonding in a rented cabin with no Wi-Fi and too much trail mix. She insisted on driving together. I call AUX, she chirped, holding up her phone. You need to hear this new podcast about female entrepreneurs. So inspiring. I smiled stiffly and said nothing. Her playlist blared through the speakers as the mountains grew around us. She talked the whole way up about how she thought she might get promoted soon, about how the CEO mentioned her pitch again last week. I just have a good feeling about this quarter, she said, eyes gleaming with ambition. I looked out the window and said nothing. That night at the cabin, I waited until everyone was asleep. I crept out of bed, laptop in hand, and found a quiet corner near the kitchen where the signal was just strong enough to connect to my mobile hotspot. I uploaded a curated folder titled Proof of Original Concept, Hume, to an encrypted server. It included the first sketch on a napkin from 2 years ago, emails I'd sent to Madison discussing the app, time-stamped development notes from Notion, early beta test results filed under my login, Git commit logs under my GitHub ID, an audio memo where I explained the purpose of the AI logic in detail. I shared it with myself, timestamped it publicly, and password-locked it with 2-factor authentication. Then I waited for the right moment. It came 3 days later. We were back in the office, and Madison was invited to present the Mind Points concept again, this time to a cross-functional innovation board with members from all departments. I watched as she stood confidently at the front of the room, iPad in hand, slides flicking behind her like a TED Talk. And then something glorious happened. One of the tech leads, a shy back-end developer named Trevor, raised his hand. Hey, sorry to interrupt, he said slowly. I just saw a GitHub post this weekend with the exact same concept, same name, even. It was uploaded by an Olivia Carter. The room stilled. My heart pounded in my chest. Madison blinked, thrown off for the first time. Really? Trevor shrugged.
Yeah.
Thought it was cool. Just weird timing. Eyes turned toward me. I tilted my head and gave her a polite smile. She looked at me, really looked for the first time in weeks. Something flickered in her eyes.
Fear.
That evening, I found her waiting for me outside the office. She looked furious. You planned that, she hissed, grabbing my arm. You're trying to make me look like a fraud. I didn't try, I said, yanking my arm free. You are one. Her lips parted in disbelief. You think this little stunt's going to work? She said. They won't believe you. I'm already too far ahead. I stepped closer. You erased my work. You tried to delete me. But here's the thing, Madison, truth has a way of surfacing, even when people try to bury it. She shook her head, eyes narrowing. You really want to do this? Ruin everything for both of us. I stared at her. You already did. I thought the confrontation outside the office would be the end of it. That she'd panic, retreat, maybe even confess quietly and try to patch things over. But I underestimated her. The next morning, she walked into the office with a blowout, a designer tote, and a self-satisfied smirk like nothing had happened. Worse, an internal email went out later that afternoon from the CEO's office. Exciting news. Madison Bell has been selected to co-lead the wellness tech expansion proposal for Q4. It hit me like a slap. She hadn't just survived the exposure. She'd twisted it. Somehow, she was still winning. I spent the next few hours locked in the bathroom stall, staring at my phone with numb hands. Scrolling. Reading. Rereading. In a quiet panic, I logged into the secure folder where I'd stored all my evidence. Everything was still there. Time-stamped. Verified. My digital footprint was flawless. But clearly, it wasn't enough. She must have had some backup plan. A pre-spun story. Maybe she claimed we'd worked on the project together, and I had gotten confused. Or worse, maybe she said I was mentally unwell. I suddenly remembered all the subtle moments she'd planted that seed. Telling coworkers I'd been off lately. Asking if I was okay in public settings. Bringing up how I'd been really stressed about my performance review. The realization made my skin crawl. I decided to go deeper. If she wanted to manipulate the narrative, I'd show them a version of her she couldn't hide. I logged into an old shared server from a startup we had interned at together 3 years ago. I wasn't even sure the access still worked, but after 3 password resets and a call to the help desk, I was in. There, buried in a forgotten folder of archived pitch decks, I found something interesting. A document titled Neurobloom, AI-driven mood tracking for teens. Authored by Olivia Carter. Co-signed by Madison Bell. Except, I remembered that summer vividly. Madison hadn't worked on that project. She had joined the company a month after it was completed. Yet somehow, her name was on the final presentation. Another theft. Another carefully placed signature. And now that I looked back on it, she had always done this. The truth came into sharp focus like a puzzle snapping together. Madison hadn't just taken this idea from me. She had built her entire reputation off stolen pieces of other people's brilliance, small enough not to raise suspicion, polished just enough to seem like her own. It wasn't ambition. It was calculated parasitism. I confronted someone who'd worked with us at the startup, an old UX lead named Erica. She now worked at a different firm but agreed to meet for coffee after I sent a vague text about a weird memory I needed to check. We sat outside a quiet cafe near the harbor. I brought my old laptop. I showed her the document. She blinked. Wait, Madison's name is on that. I nodded slowly. She didn't do a single thing on that deck, Erica said firmly. That was all you. I remember because we pulled an all-nighter the day before demo day, and she was still onboarding. Would you be willing to put that in writing? I asked. She hesitated. Are you in trouble? I met her eyes. No. But someone else should be. By the end of the week, I had compiled a portfolio of Madison's pattern of deception, at least 5 separate instances over 4 years. Emails, Slack messages, archived folders, backdated uploads with her signature on work she never touched. I didn't want to go public yet, not until I knew I had everything. But the more I uncovered, the more horrifying it became. She was meticulous. She made sure to praise people publicly just enough to seem generous, but never gave them actual credit where it counted. Her rise was built on the uncredited genius of everyone around her. One night, as I sorted through another digital archive, I received a strange message on LinkedIn. Hey, Olivia. I don't know if this is weird, but I came across your portfolio recently and just wanted to say, I really admire your work on MindPoints. I thought Madison came up with that, but after seeing the logs, I realized I was wrong. I think people deserve to know. It was from a junior engineer, Aiden, who'd helped with early back-end development on the prototype. He'd clearly stumbled upon the GitHub repo. I asked him how he found it. He told me someone on Reddit had shared it on a UX thread titled, "When your work gets stolen, fight back quietly." My anonymous post. It had gone semi-viral. And just like that, the momentum began to shift. Not officially. Not yet. But quietly. In DMs. In whispered conversations at lunch. In tech community discords. People started putting pieces together. Madison's empire of credibility had cracks, and now the light was shining through. Then came the email that changed everything. It was from HR. Subject line: urgent. Ethics review request. private meeting scheduled. They had received anonymous concerns about intellectual property misuse. A review panel was being formed. They wanted to speak with both of us, separately. My hands trembled as I closed the message. It was happening. Madison approached me that afternoon. She looked nervous for the first time in months. "What's going on?" she asked, cornering me in the hallway. "Why did HR message me?" I shrugged. Maybe they've noticed something's not adding up. Her jaw clenched. "You think you've won?" I leaned in, my voice low. "I'm not here to win, Madison. I'm here to tell the truth." She said nothing, and for the first time, she looked small. The next day, I stepped into the HR office, armed with a printed binder full of evidence. I laid it all out, calmly, factually, without drama. I explained the history, the pattern, the manipulation. I showed timestamps, version histories, screenshots, corroborating statements from Erica and 2 other ex-coworkers. They listened in silence. When I finished, one of the panelists said, "This is extensive and extremely serious." I nodded. I don't want revenge. I just want my name back. The office was quieter than usual the next morning. Not just quiet, tense. As if the walls themselves were holding their breath. People weren't looking me in the eye, but they weren't avoiding me either. It was this eerie in-between, where no one knew which side of the story would win. Except for me. Because I knew. And soon everyone else would too. Later that day, a company-wide meeting was announced. Just a vague line in the subject header. Integrity and innovation. A culture of credit and collaboration. I saw Madison in the cafeteria right after the email went out. She sat at the center table, flanked by people she used to lead. But her posture had changed, shoulders tense, voice quieter. She didn't look like a star anymore. She looked cornered. I watched her from across the room. And for a moment, part of me, just a small, battered part, wondered if I had taken things too far. But then I remembered the 2 a.m. nights. The hours I'd spent creating, dreaming, writing, building, while she smiled in meetings, repeating my words like they'd been hers all along. She hadn't just taken my work. She'd taken my identity. The meeting was held in the 7th floor conference hall, glass walls, white leather chairs, and a giant screen that read, "The truth behind the innovation." I was told by HR ahead of time that someone from the executive team would address the issue, though they didn't say who. To my surprise, it was Catherine Liu, the chief strategy officer. Calm, poised, but razor-sharp in every word. She took the podium, cleared her throat, and said, "Today's message isn't about punishment. It's about clarity. In recent weeks, we've reviewed concerns about the authorship and attribution of key projects, particularly surrounding the MindPoints prototype and the wellness tech expansion strategy." Every eye turned to us, to me, then to her. Our internal audit team, along with external legal counsel, reviewed version histories, Slack archives, design logs, and source files. What we found was clear. Madison's hands were in her lap, fingers clenched into fists. The original ideation, research, and strategy behind the MindPoints initiative was created solely by Olivia Carter. The silence that followed was deafening. A few heads turned. Madison didn't move. "It's important to state," Catherine continued, "that in a culture built on innovation, there's no place for misrepresentation. We have initiated a change in leadership on affected projects. Going forward, all contributions will be documented transparently." Then came the final blow. Effective immediately, Madison Bell is no longer involved with a Q4 wellness tech proposal or any strategic leadership roles in this department. My chest tightened, not with fear, but relief. Not vengeance. Not smugness. Just truth. Finally spoken out loud. The aftermath was immediate. Some coworkers approached me quietly. One dropped off a sticky note on my desk that just said, "Proud of you." Another left a protein bar and a coffee with no name. It was subtle, but it was enough. People were watching, listening, and now they believed me. That Friday, as I was packing up for the weekend, Madison showed up at my desk. Not like the Madison from a month ago, the one with the smug smile and designer shoes. This one looked hollow. She stood in silence for a while before speaking. "You're really proud of yourself, aren't you?" she said quietly. I didn't answer. She stepped closer. "You think this makes you the hero?" Still, I said nothing. She scoffed. "You don't know what you've done." And then her voice cracked. "My offers are being pulled. The company I was supposed to go to next quarter?
Gone.
My mentor? Won't return my calls. Do you understand what you've done to me?" That's when I spoke. Soft but firm. "You did it to yourself." I just stopped pretending I didn't notice. She looked at me, really looked at me. For the first time, there was no mask, no calculation, just raw, bewildered disbelief. As if it had never occurred to her that someone like me could stand up to someone like her. She turned to walk away.
Paused.
Then whispered, "You could have come to me first.
Talk to me.
Instead, you humiliated me." I looked her dead in the eye. "And how many times did I come to you with ideas, Madison? How many times did I trust you, and you took what I gave you and claimed it as yours?" Her mouth opened, then closed. She didn't have an answer. She never did. I walked home that night with the San Diego sky burning orange over the ocean. Something inside me felt clean for the first time in a long time. Not perfect, not untouchable, but free. I didn't become a company hero. I didn't expect to. But something incredible happened 2 weeks later. I was called into Catherine's office. She offered me a new role, lead innovation strategist. The very role Madison had once lobbied for. She said, "You're not just talented, Olivia. You're resilient. And this company needs people who aren't afraid to protect what matters." My first presentation in the new role was met with quiet nods, then smiles, and finally applause. But it was Aiden's message that stuck with me the most. He texted me later that evening. "The way you handled all of this? That's leadership. The quiet kind that actually changes things." And it wasn't just about Madison anymore. It was about all the people who'd been silenced before me. People who'd been told their brilliance needed someone else's voice to be heard. But not anymore. Not on my watch. Some people think vindication comes in thunderclaps, cheering crowds, public apologies, trophies held up for the world to see. But that's not how it happened for me. For me, it was silence. A quiet Sunday morning. My apartment filled with sunlight. The city stretching beyond my window like it had always been waiting for me to finally see it. Not through someone else's lens, not from the back seat of someone else's ambition, but from my own center. I'd started to breathe differently. Not always deeply, but more freely. 2 months had passed since Madison's downfall. She wasn't fired, but she was reassigned. No more glory projects. No public-facing leadership. I heard whispers she might leave the company soon, but no one seemed in a rush to stop her. A few tried to rekindle friendships with me, people who once stood in Madison's circle. I didn't hold grudges, but I also didn't forget. I was polite, distant, but focused. My work had become more personal than ever. Every project I touched now carried the lesson of integrity, of voice, of value. And the deeper I went, the more I realized this story was never just about revenge. It was about returning to myself. One evening, I received a LinkedIn message from someone unexpected. Grace Matthews. She'd interned with us the previous year. Quiet, smart, always scribbling notes. I barely remembered speaking to her. "Hi, Olivia. I just wanted to say thank you. What you did with the Mind Point situation. It inspired me to speak up at my new job. I was afraid before, but your story gave me courage." I stared at the message for a while. Then I read it again. And again. It hit me harder than I expected. Because in the chaos of Madison's exposure, I hadn't thought much about the ripple effect. How many others had been watching, waiting, hoping for someone to show them they didn't have to stay silent. But life isn't a straight line of triumph. The higher you climb, the more fragile the air becomes. One morning, I got an anonymous envelope in my company mailbox. No return address. Inside was a printed email, one that I had written months before, venting about leadership, calling out upper management arrogance, and questioning the company's values during the Mind Point scandal. It wasn't malicious, just raw, unfiltered. But it could have been twisted. and someone wanted to twist it, I brought it straight to Catherine. Her face was unreadable as she read the pages. When she finally looked up, she asked, "Is this real?" I nodded.
Yes.
I wrote it. I was hurting. I was exhausted. But I didn't send it to anyone but myself. It was a draft. She studied me. Then how did someone get it? I don't know. I think Madison had access to my old Google Drafts. Back when we worked closely. Maybe she kept copies. A long pause. Catherine finally exhaled. "I appreciate your honesty," she said. "And, to be frank, I don't blame you for what you wrote." She folded the pages and placed them in a drawer. "But Olivia, this world isn't always fair. Sometimes people don't need the truth, they just need a narrative." That word hit me like glass breaking. Narrative. Someone was still trying to rewrite mine. The email didn't surface publicly. I never found out who sent the envelope. But the feeling it left me with? It lingered, like a bruise beneath the surface of everything I touched. I knew I had to make a choice. Stay in the company, rise higher, risk more, or leave on my own terms, build something of my own, free from old ghosts. That night, I sat in my kitchen, sipping tea, laptop open. I pulled up a folder I'd been building for a while. Project Horizon, a nonprofit startup idea I had shelved months ago during the height of the drama. Its mission, to help young professionals protect their creative work, advocate for their voice, and document contributions in collaborative environments. A platform built by someone who had lived through being erased. I clicked New Document.
Typed.
The most dangerous thing they ever did was underestimate me. And just like that, I started writing my own chapter. A few days later, Aiden and I met for coffee again. We hadn't talked much since everything blew over. He gave me a half smile as I walked in.
"So,
"How's it feel to win?" I sat down and chuckled softly. "It doesn't feel like a win," I said. "It feels like survival." He nodded. "That's probably more accurate." Then he leaned in. I almost said something. Back when she stole your pitch. I knew it wasn't hers. I saw your notes, your drafts. But I was afraid. I tilted my head. And now?" He looked down. "Now I regret staying quiet." There was no anger in me anymore. Only clarity. "I think we all learn at different speeds," I told him. "And some lessons they come when it's already too late to fix the past. But not too late to fix the future." Weeks turned to months. Project Horizon launched as a pilot site. Within the first month, we had over 4,000 signups. Stories poured in. Graphic designers, junior developers,
copywriters,
illustrators, people who had been overlooked, underestimated, overshadowed. All of them carrying the same message in different voices. They took credit. They dismissed me. I stayed quiet. But not anymore. I built a team. Grace became my outreach lead. We held virtual panels, mentorship programs, legal education for freelancers and corporate employees alike. And every now and then, I'd get a message from someone who said, "I thought I was crazy. I thought I was overreacting. But your story told me I wasn't alone." Then one day, I received a message request from an unfamiliar name. I opened it cautiously. My breath caught. It was from Madison. Just one line. "I saw what you're building. Maybe I was wrong about you." No apology. No ownership. Just a hollow acknowledgement. I didn't reply. Some ghosts don't deserve resurrection. 1 year later, I stood on a stage in New York, accepting an award for innovation in workplace advocacy. The auditorium lights were warm. The applause was real. And in the crowd, I saw dozens of faces just like mine had once been. Tired, frustrated, hopeful. I told them. They told me my voice was too quiet, that my work needed louder hands to be seen. But the truth is, loud doesn't mean right. And today, I stand here not because someone gave me permission, but because I stopped asking for it. The audience rose to their feet. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was reclaiming something. I felt like I had created something new, something no one could ever steal again. They thought they could erase me. But they forgot, I was the one who drew the blueprint.